Hello and welcome to today's Delta Credit Tip. So you pull your credit report, you see something derogatory on there, you're like, how long is this thing going to be on here? It's been here forever, right? Feels like I need a penicillin shot to get rid of it. Well, stay tuned. We're going to tell you just how long stuff can stay on your credit report right here on today's Delta Credit Tip. No penicillin required. Hello and welcome back to today's Delta Credit Tip. So today we're talking about how long that lovely stuff can stay on your credit report. Just like we do every Thursday at noon, we're coming with more information that'll help you in your credit repair process. So while we're at it, let's get the whole logistics stuff out of the way. Go ahead and hit subscribe below, hit the bell, right? Because every Thursday you want to get this information right out of the gate. And if you happen to know someone who's having issues with things that are on their credit report, share this information with them. This is the whole point of us putting this on YouTube, so that we can have a forum that we can share this information and people can empower themselves to make a choice, to make a change here with Delta. But let's go ahead and start talking about these things that are on your credit report. Now, first, let's start with the easy stuff, right? This easy stuff are those things that you actually want on your credit report. And when it comes to positive accounts, if they're open, they're going to stay on the credit report for as long as the accounts are open. If they are positive yet closed, typically those accounts are going to stay on there for about 10 years. Okay, but that's really not what anybody cares about. What they really care about is the bad stuff, right? Now, what you will find is that most bad stuff stay on your credit report for about 7 years. Okay, but that really isn't the kick in the pants. The kick in the pants is, well, when does the clock actually start, right? So as we're going through the different examples, we're going to talk about when the clock starts and when the clock ends. That determines how long something can be on your credit report. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning of your relationship with that merchant or that lender. Okay, and that starts with the application. So when you apply for credit, that inquiry goes on your credit report, and that will stay on your credit report from the date that that lender or merchant pulled your credit for 2 years. Okay? Now, credit pulls are one of the least things that can actually affect your credit score. So it's really not that detrimental. It's when you have multiple pulls that really create a problem with the score. Okay. Now, what they will tell you at the bureaus is that they're going to truncate all the pulls on a certain period of time that are similar, so that you can shop freely without necessarily having to, disrupt your credit score. Well, the problem with that approach is that I really don't have that much confidence in the bureaus, because they, a couple of billion pulls a day, and they're going to be looking at Michael's credit report and say, "Oh, Mike, yeah, he's just shopping for a house, man. Just going to put all those things together." No, I don't have enough faith in them to do that. So if you're going to be getting multiple pulls on your credit report, like say from a car dealership, then what you're going to want to do is pull your credit ahead of time, see what the score is, let the bureaus know that you're going to be shopping, and so that they can kind of anticipate it. Because see, once the credit score has changed as a result of the pulling, if you didn't know what your credit score was before, you don't know how big of an impact those pulls had on your credit. So you can't really argue with the bureaus and say, well, you didn't truncate them, you did truncate them, or whatever the case may be. So inquiries, 2 years from the credit report. Okay. Another thing that they're going to be looking at is, let's say, so you've established the account. Okay. Now the account is open, but at some point you pay it late. Okay. Well, now that late pay, that 30-day, 60-day, 90-day late pay is going to be on that credit report of yours for 7 years. And the clock starts on that particular notation when you actually made the late payment. Okay, that's pretty much a no-brainer, right? But now, now the account charges off, right? They've accepted it as a loss. You've gone, let's say, 90 days without making a payment. Now they call the entire amount due, and they charge off the account. And now let's say it's a credit card. Well, the credit card can stay on your credit report for 7 years from the date you stop paying the creditor or merchant that led to the charge-off. So if you pay, late, pay, late, pay, it's that last pay that starts the charge-off, that starts the clock. Because if after that late pay, you then go, after that last payment, you go late, charge-off, right? That last month shall I say the first month that you didn't make the payment that led to the charge-off, that's when that charge-off clock starts on your credit report. Now, there could be a caveat to that. So let's say you have, instead of a credit card, you have a car. And that car gets repoed. 3 months later, they sell the car, credit your account, update the credit report, and move on. Well, the date that credit hit your credit report, that's when the clock starts for that vehicle or that home. And for homes, it's a much bigger deal because a short sale or foreclosure that goes to auction, that could take years. So what you may find is that 2 or 3 years after the fact, the clock has started on that particular asset. Okay? And for those kinds of debts, it's when the last credit hit your credit report. Okay? So now we've gone through, and now it goes to a debt collector, right? We've applied, we've held the account, it went late, it's charged off, now it's with a debt collector. Well, how long does that debt collector get to report that account? Well, their clock is identical to the clock of the original creditor. They can only report their managing that account, whether it's bought or assigned, for 7 years from the date you stop paying the original creditor. Doesn't matter how many times they bought and sold the debt. Okay, it doesn't matter. What matters is when you stop paying the original creditor, and that's when that clock starts. Okay, so now you don't pay the debt collector or any of the debt collectors, and you decide, you know what, I'm just going to file bankruptcy. Okay, so you file bankruptcy, and you file a Chapter 7. Okay, so in the course of filing a Chapter 7, that public record is going to stay on your credit report for 10 years from the date that you filed, provided that it discharged. All right? If it never discharges, the clock doesn't start. Right? It has to be either discharged or dismissed. Okay? So let's say you file a Chapter 13 instead of a Chapter 7. Well, that 13 will stay on your credit report for 7 years from the date that you file. So a Chapter 7 stays on your credit report for 10 years. A Chapter 13 stays on your credit report for 7 years. Okay? From the date that you filed. Now, here's the funny thing. Let's say you file for bankruptcy, but you don't go through with it. Right? It gets dismissed. Either because you back away because you figure, I'll just handle this on my own, or the trustee doesn't think that you're a viable candidate, or whatever the case may be, and it gets dismissed instead of discharged. That dismissal actually stays on that credit report for 10 years, which is completely crazy because when you think about it, you never went through with it. So that's how the credit reports run. That's it is what it is. So let's say instead of filing bankruptcy, you don't have to because your major creditors, right, gave you a 1099 instead. Right? They just simply wrote it off. They're not going to worry about you paying them. They're going to go ahead and just write it off. And as a result, you have to now claim that as income. But there's such a huge tax liability to it that you don't pay your taxes. Well, now you have a tax lien on your credit report. Well, how long is that going to stay on there? And again, that's another 7-year stay. Now, here's the thing about tax liens. They're really not reporting those anymore, right? Or they shouldn't be. But if you happen to have one that's on your credit report and you start to make payments, once you make your third payment, they'll delete it off the credit report. You just have to go through the motions with them and make sure that it's okay. So the last thing we want to talk about are judgments. You got sued for something. Well, how long is that going to be on your credit report? Again, 7 years from the filing date. Okay, but that's for debts that are paid, that are resolved. If you have an open debt collection account, as long as it's open with the court, it could stay on the credit report. Now, here's the thing about public records. The question really becomes with public records is that does it belong on your credit report in the first place? Same thing with debt collectors. Does it really belong on your credit report in the first place? Now that's a whole nother video. Okay, so stay tuned, subscribe to us so that you'll know when it comes out, because every Thursday we come out with new stuff, so hit that bell so that you know. But most importantly, share this information. I hope it's been helpful for you, because if you happen to notice something on your credit report that's been outdated, that's your cue now to say, okay, let's get this stuff removed. Let other people know what's going on so they can make a choice to make a change. Delta.